Rule number 8 is about light and ventilation. Okay, so obviously the intent of this rule is to ensure that all buildings in the Philippines have adequate light and adequate ventilation. So since this is about light and ventilation, there's no surprise that this chapter is going to deal with those aspects of the building design that affect how much light and how much ventilation buildings get. Now, this rule is going to be about things like setbacks and room sizes and ceiling heights and window sizes. All of these things can affect how much light and how much ventilation buildings get. So that's the parang focus of the rule. But there are parang topics that are not as parang strictly speaking related. No? But anyway, let's just go over the topics. No? I'm starting with this. Let's go back to what we learned in Rule 7 in PSOT, OSL, RUSA, and ISA. So the things that we know so far are the following. Number one, when you add PSO and OSL, you get the total lot area. This is true, we said that. That's true. When you add RUSA and ISA, you get the total open space. That's also true. What's new in Rule 8 is this. The code sets a minimum value for USA and a maximum value for ISA. This is definitely true. How do you know ano yung minimum value for USA and maximum value for ISA? They're all given in table 8.1 on page 131. Okay, so that's how you get that. Basta ang minimum is, ang importante is, may minimum USA tayo, USA is the unpaved, and then kabalitaran, yung sementado, yung paved, may maximum naman tayo. You cannot exceed the maximum that is set. Okay, now let's talk about the lot type. The code defines 7 types of lots. Okay, I won't read the list kasi isa-isahin natin siya. Starting now. The first one is the inside lot. Ito yung inside lot. It's sometimes referred to as a regular lot as well. No, regular lot. Um, um, ang importante sa inside lot is it's bounded by a public road or a street on one side. So in this case, not the calzada. So one side of the calzada is an inside lot. Most lots are inside lots. No? All of the lots, inside lots. Yeah. Maraming projects na ibibigay sa exam or binibigay sa exam inside lot. Of course, ginagamit din yung iba, pero yung inside lot yung pinaka-common because it's kind of the default, the regular lot. It sounds similar, but it's so different yung interior lot. Okay, na-mention ko siya kanina, ito yung sinasabi natin na hindi siya nakadikit sa kalsada. We call that an interior lot. And what we said earlier is still true. Kapag interior lot, you cannot really build on it unless you have access to the street. No? So in this case, as you can see, kailangan mong bumili ng right of way dun sa kapitbahay mo sa harap. You have to talk to the person, ask, can I purchase this, ganyan, ganyan, ganyan. Until you have secured this, you cannot build anything here. Okay, you can own it, but you can't build a house here. Hanggang wala kang right of way. Okay? If you're worried, paano ko kayo ibenta, pag-usapan nyo, you can actually go to court naman. Well, yeah, let's not go there. But yeah, you can go to court if you're curious. I've read some decisions by the Supreme Court pertaining to this. You just have to prove now this is the least um, parang ito yung pinaka-hindi hassle na option for everyone. No? Kasi some neighbors would say, bakit ako yung nakapalahin? Bakit hindi siya doon ganyan, ganyan, ganyan? Bakit hindi na siya dito bumili, ganyan, ganyan? Most of the time, you just have to prove na this is the most practical option for everyone involved. No? And you can't be choosy. No, as the person buying, hindi mo pwedeng i-require, gusto ko sa gitna. Okay, gusto ko dito. Ayoko doon. Gusto ko, you're not really going to be able to choose. Pero ang point is, the law kind of guarantees that you're going to be able to buy this. Okay? Ang hindi na ginaguarantee ng batas is, you're going to get the best option that you want. No? There are times when sasabihin ng batas or ng judge or ng Supreme Court, kung umabot kayo ng Supreme Court na, no, huwag kang choosy, parang just buy this. This is the one that you will get. You don't get to be choosy. Parang ganun. Yeah. So anyway, bottom line, you have to have this right of way for your interior lot before you can build anything on the interior lot. Okay, corner lot, lot bounded by streets on two sides, two adjacent sides to be specific. When we say adjacent, this side and this side, magkadikit sila adjacent. Why do we have to say adjacent? Kasi kung two opposite sides, ibang usapan. We call that a true lot. So ito, lot bounded by streets on two sides, pero two opposite sides. One here, another one here. If you combine the two, corner lot and through lot, you get what we call the corner through lot. Basically, a lot bounded by streets on three sides. No? Kumbaga, sa isang side ka na lang may kapitbahay, the other side, puro kalsada, or in this case, may ali pa. Pero ang point is, wala kang kapitbahay dito, wala kang kapitbahay dito, and dito. Dito ka lang may kapitbahay. Corner through lot. Kung wala ka ng kapitbahay, period. No, like all sides may kalsada, or in this case, tatlong kalsada, kalsada, ali, kasi ito may ilog. Ito na yung category mo. Corner lot abutting three or more streets, alleys, rivers, etc. Okay? And finally, we have the end lot. For the end lot naman, um, ang description ng building code sa drawing is this. Parang siyang corner lot, but it's on the other side of the bend. Di ba the street bends like this, nag-bend yung street like that. Ito yung corner lot kanina. Ito naman yung end lot on this other side of the corner. Okay? Parang dito sa corner lot, pero a bad corner lot. The bad corner lot is on the bad side of the corner kasi ito yung side na walang frontage. Okay? Kung sasarado mo siya ng parang grid lang talaga, technically, wala siyang frontage kung dito mo terminate. Pero as you can see, in-extend nila ng bahagya, or in this case, sinamford ng konting corner, parang may access siya sa road. Kasi without that access, this, strictly speaking, becomes unusable. Kasi wala siyang direct access to the street, wala siyang right of way, kumbaga. Okay, that's why in the building code, pinapakita nila either i-extend mo rin ganun yung cut, or i-chamfer mo yung corner para hindi siya maging zero right of way. Again, no right of way, you cannot build anything on the property. Okay, we'll continuing with the other topics. Let's quickly differentiate the word yard from the word setback. Pag sinabing yard, we're talking about the required open space between the outermost face of the building and the property line. Between the property line to the building, that space is your yard. Hindi yung setback. Ano yung setback? The setback is the width of the yard. If you want to be really strict about it, the actual space is called a yard. The setback is just the dimension of the yard. Now we're just sharing this because who knows, papatanungin pa yan. And speaking of setbacks, how much setback is required? Okay, that's a very basic question, and the answer is given in the building code. For residential projects, R1 to R5 residential zones, the setbacks prescribed are here. Iba sa front, iba sa side, iba sa rear. Minsan, may mga disclaimer, double asterisk, required side setback is 2 meters, pero pwede kang mag-firewall on one side, so pwede sa isang side lang required yung 2 meters. R2, pwede kang mag-firewall on one side. So obviously, on the side na may firewall, wala kang setback doon. Yung mga ganun lang ibig sabihin yan, no? Tignan nyo na lang yung legend. Pero ang bottom line is, the front setback is given, the side setback is given, the rear setback is given for every zone. You follow this in the exam, this is how you answer it in the exam. In the real world, you have to look at the zoning ordinances and ano yung LGU requirements kasi they may sometimes impose larger setbacks than this. Right, that's fine. But in the exam, they're never going to ask you naman, based on the requirements of Cebu City, no, they're never going to do that to you. Obviously, you'll be asked about your default setback requirements in the building code. Should you memorize this? This is usually a day 2 question, so if you can't, then wag na, I guess. Pero napakabiling i-memorize yun, guys. Pareho lang kasi yung R1 and R4. Pareho lang yung R2 and R3 mostly, okay? And then yung R5 is unique, so parang you're just really memorizing 3 zones. I would suggest you memorize nyo yan para tapos na agad. Kung maging day 1 question, alam mo pa. Diba? Pero it's usually a day 2 question. It's just I think you should memorize this. It's easy enough, okay? It saves time when you're reviewing, it saves time when you're doing, sample problems, etc. Pero, yeah, so you require setbacks, but you'll notice again, R1 to R5 lang. Paano kapag non-residential zone? Ano yung required setback? There's a second table, giving the same thing, front, side, rear setback. Again, front, side, rear setback. For commercial, industrial, institutional, and recreational buildings. But honestly, this is used for all other zones na hindi residential. You'll see though that the front setback and the side and the rear, nagbabago-bago sila, minsan 8, minsan 6, minsan 5. Why? depending on the size of the road right of way. Kung gaano kalaki yung kalsada serving the property, the size of that road determines how big the setbacks will be. The larger the road, say 30, the larger the required setbacks, 8, 5, 5. The smaller, say 10 or below 10, the smaller the required setbacks, 5, 2, 2. So that's how you read this thing. Okay, another common question. Kanina pinag-usapan natin yung TOSL, building footprint, ARBF, PSO, etc. A common question is this, yung carport ba, part ba yun ng open space na labas? Or part ba siya ng building footprint? This is the categorical answer in Rule 8. Kapag may bubong daw yung carport, if the carport is roofed, then it's part of the building footprint. If it is not roofed, then it is part of the TOSL. It's that simple. Okay? Dito nyo rin may infer, or you can make the inference here, na ang open space, para ma-consider na open space, dapat nasa labas, dapat walang bubong. Okay? Dapat nakaarawan, dapat nauulanan. Kung hindi yan nauulanan na nakaarawan, it's probably not open space kasi may bubong na is part of the building footprint already. So that's true of the carport, but I think it's true of everything. And pag may bubong, then it's hard to argue the open space. Okay, firewall extensions. This is about the size of the firewall. Okay, I'll just talk about it here. Okay, ang purpose ng firewall, just to recap, is to ensure na hindi tatawid yung apoy from one building to another. That's the purpose of the firewall. Hindi dapat makakatawid sa kabila. And for the firewall to do that job, it's important that the firewall itself is larger than the building silhouette. Hindi pwede, kasi yung shaded portion, that's the building silhouette. You'll notice the firewall is larger, naka-extend, may mga extension. This is important kasi this is how you ensure na hindi makakatawid yung point. Kung yung firewall mo, sinakta mo lang dyan sa perimeter ng building silhouette, then there's a chance na yung apoy baka makatawid sa kasunod na bahay. So dapat mas malaki. I don't think anyone's going to question. Ang tanong lang talaga is, ano ba yung required extension? And we're now going to answer that. Above the roof line, minimum 400 millimeter extension. Under the roof eve, minimum 300 millimeters. From all other edges of the building, 600 millimeters. To recap, 400 above the roof, 300 under the eaves, 600 generally from other sides of the building. So that's the required firewall extensions. Now let's talk about ceiling height. Very important for light and ventilation. Gaano kataas dapat yung kisame? To answer that question, dapat may context yung tanong. Kasi hindi consistent yung sagot. Okay? Nag-iba yung sagot, depende sa situation. So, pag tinanong ka, what's the minimum required ceiling height? You must know first, like, the question has to clarify. Anong floor ba yung tinatanong mo? Because iba-iba yan per floor. And is the building artificially ventilated or naturally ventilated? Kasi nag-iiba rin yung sagot depending on whether it's artificially or naturally ventilated. So let's start with an artificially ventilated building. Artificially ventilated yung building. Ang tanong, ano yung required ceiling height? Ground level, 2.7. Second level, 2.4. Succeeding levels, 2.1. Mezzanine is 1.8. Minimum yan. Feel free to increase if you want. Paano pag naturally ventilated building? Ground level 2.7, second level 2.7, succeeding levels 2.7, so 2.7 everything, except mezzanine 1.8. So that's how you answer that question. Okay? Looking at this table alone, you might assume that, you might think that the ground level is 2.7 all the time. Okay, kasi nakalagay naman, pag artificially ventilated, 2.7. Pag naturally ventilated, 2.7. So mukhang safe answer yung 2.7. Whatever happens, it's 2.7 for the ground level, right? Not necessarily, because of this next clause. May ganitong requirement, basahin yung mabuti yung sinasabi ng section 325. Pwede mag 2.4 meters yung ground level if these two things are true. One, we're just talking about a single-story building, meaning walang upper floors. Second, it's artificially ventilated. Again, pwedeng 2.4 lang yung ceiling height kung single-story lang yung building and it's artificially ventilated. Okay, why is this important? Again, hindi laging 2.7 yung minimum for the ground level. There are some instances where 2.4 is acceptable. Again, Basta artificially ventilated and wala nga proposed, pwede ka mag 2.4 sa ground floor. That's all I'm saying, and that's pretty important, I think. Okay? So, ito, pero kung multi-story building, yeah, 2.7 tayo sa ground floor lagi, whether artificially ventilated or naturally ventilated. So, here we're illustrating to you, on this side is the artificially ventilated building, so 27, 24, and 21. Ito naman naturally ventilated building, 27 on all floors. Okay. Next is talk about minimum room size. A minimum room size. The building code identifies three kinds of rooms na may minimum size requirement. Now, there are minimum sizes for three types of rooms. Ano yung tatlong rooms na yun? Na in-identify ng building code? Habitable room, kitchen, and toilet. Ano yung minimum size ng mga yan? Kapag habitable room, minimum area is 6 square meters and ang minimum dimension is 2 meters. Pag kitchen, 3 square meters minimum area, minimum dimension of 1.5, and kapag toilet and bath, 1.2 square meters minimum area, 0.9 meters ang minimum dimension. Okay, so again, three types of rooms for which the building code specified a minimum area and minimum dimension. Okay, how about airspace requirement, or as I like to call this, minimum room volume. This is really about volume naman. The other one's about area, ito about volume. Again, three types of rooms na may minimum volume requirement or minimum airspace requirements. Schoolroom, workshops, factories, and offices, and habitable rooms. Kapag schoolroom, the minimum volume is 3 cubic meters per person. Make sure then there's 1 square meter floor area per person. Kapag workshops, factories, and offices, 12 cubic meters per person. Kapag habitable room, 14 cubic meters per person. Again, for me, volume requirement yan. Pero if you want to be strict about it, airspace requirement yung nakalagay sa, sa building code. Okay? So yun yung requirements. Now, another important thing for the ventilation. We have 4 minutes remaining, so let's just finish it until 12. Minimum area ng windows. For habitable rooms, it should be at least equal to 10% of the floor area. So get the floor area of the room, take 10% of that. Dapat ganun yung aggregate area or total area ng mga bintana in that room. Okay? But the absolute minimum is 1 square meter. For bathrooms and laundry rooms, 5% of the floor area, but never go less than 240 square millimeters. So, how do you use, kaya po gagamitin yung absolute minimum? You use this as a fallback kapag masyadong maliit yung lumalabas pag 10% or 5%. If 10% gives you an answer that's less than 1 square meter, ignore that, just follow one, because you're not allowed to be lower than 1 square meter. Same here, you're not allowed to be lower than 240 square millimeters. Easements. Okay, so when we talk about easements, we're actually, well, the building code, when the building code talks about easements, they're actually talking about water easements in particular, because there are many kinds of easements, there are many kinds of legal easements if you study the civil code, pero this one is in particular about easements from bodies of water. So basically, bigay ko muna yung short version of the story. May requirement kasi yung water code na in-apply na rin, na nakikita mo na rin sa building code. Nasa kinopy na ng building code yung provisions ng water code. Basically requiring us to observe parang an easement from bodies of water like rivers. Kunyari, imagine that this is a river. Yung riverbank, yung parang land beside the body of water must become easements. Okay, parang we treat them as easements. Okay, and what that means is they're public land. They should not be built upon. You cannot build like buildings on them. They must be used. They must be accessible to all members of the community. Mga ganon. So, body of water, itong lupa na to is yung easement. And it's public land. Pag sinabing easement dito, easement now is public land. So ito yun, easement is public land. What this means is, yung part na easement should be outside of private property, should be equally enjoyed by all members of the community, and the only uses within the easement are those that are public in character, public uses lang, recreational uses lang yung allowed, hindi pwedeng private uses. Okay, so I think that's a generally easy concept to grasp. Important thing I establish now is, gaano ba kalaki yung easement? So we know na yung land beside the body of water, gagawin siyang easement, right? Ang tanong ngayon is, how wide? Now, how wide yung strip of land na yun? Ito yung nakalagay sa water code. which is again also in the civil code. Sorry, in the building code. 3 meters per side for urban areas, 20 meters per side for agricultural areas, and 40 meters per side for forest areas. Again, 3 kapag urban, 20 kapag agricultural, and 40 kapag forest. So, yeah, ito yung example. Kanyari, urban area. Again, body of water over here. Yung easement is 3 meters. Okay, this is easement, this is public land. Hanggang dito lang dapat yung legally usable private property. Okay, hindi pwede nag-extend dito yung mga building, mga fence, kung ano ba. Okay. Now, yung last part nitong easement subchapter talks about yung recommended uses for the easement. Kasi so, it's public land, we know it. Kung urban area, 3 meters. Kung agricultural, 20, so on and so forth. What exactly do we plan to do with that strip of land? May dalawang recommendations ang building code. Meron siyang nire-recommend na promenade, meron siyang nire-recommend na esplanade. Okay? The promenade option is recommended for urban areas where the easement is only 3 meters wide. In the promenade option, basically what the building code is suggesting is it develops into like parang a linear park, parang a walkway. So basically, it's just a paved walkway with pedestrian-friendly features like railings, no guardrails para walang mahulog sa tubig, merong street furniture, etc., etc. So it's basically parang developed and paved walkway. Okay? Pero for easements larger than 3 meters, another recommendation is itong, we call this esplanade. Okay, this is recommended if the easement is at least 9 meters wide, and this is basically parang an expanded version of the promenade. So yung 9 meter wide or more na easement mo, you're going to develop in this way. So meron kang promenade, portion 3 meters wide, right next to the body of water. Pero bukod pa doon, you have an expandable carriageway or calzada for vehicles and a sidewalk on the other side. Again, this is recommended for easements that are at least 9 meters wide. Okay, let's move on to the next topic, road right of way. Okay, road right of way. Let's start with the most basic, important concept here. Pag sinabing road right of way, kasama dito yung carriageway and the sidewalks. Okay? Incorrect translation yung pag sinabi, yung kasi some people translate this to Tagalog as kalsada. The road right of way is yung kalsada. That's not entirely correct because yung kalsada is the carriageway. Yung bangketa or yung sidewalk is also part of the road right of way. So hindi lang kalsada, pati yung bangketa part ng road right of way. Basta, bottom line, the road right of way includes not just the carriageway but also the sidewalks. Okay? So, balikan natin yung important reminder kanina regarding access to property. Sabi natin, kapag interior lot yung lot mo, you can't really build anything on it unless you have your own right of way. No, meron ka access to a public space like a street or a yard or whatever. That's true. No, we said that already. We talked about that kanina. Now we have to be more specific. Okay, when we said you need your own right of way, how wide should it be? How much land are you going to be buying from your neighbor in front? Kasi di ba, bibili ka ng right of way. That access road should be at least 3 meters wide, and that's just the road component, wala pa yung sidewalk component, pero the road component should be at least 3 meters wide. Yung shaft land is just, i-chamfer mo yung corners, no? At para hindi siya sharp corner when it meets the street. Pero ang importante part dito is yung 3 meter wide minimum for the access road. Okay, now, yung 3 meters na yan, another thing about that, yung 3 meters na yan is not always enough. 3 meters is the starting value, no? It should never be less than 3. Pag less than 3, sure tayo, mali yun. No, kulang yun. It has to be 3 or more. Let's talk about when 3 is not sufficient. No, when you have to go more than 3. Sometimes you have to have a 4 meter wide access road, 5 meters, 6, 6.7. This is dependent on how many houses or how many dwelling units the access road will be serving. The more dwelling units it will be serving, the wider the access road should be, which makes sense. Okay? To be more specific, the minimum of 3 meters is only good for 6 dwelling units. If it's serving 6 dwelling units or less, then sure, why not? You can stick to 3 if you want. But the moment you exceed 6, you have to exceed 3 meters as well. 7 to 15 dapat 4 meters wide. 16 to 25 dwelling units, 5 meters. 26 to 35, 6. And more than 35, 6.7. Okay, and like I said kanina, this is just the carriageway component. Meron pang sidewalk required on each side, bringing up the total to more than 3, magiging 4.2, etc. Pero, yeah, this is the table. This table tells you how wide the right of way needs to be for interior lots. Okay? So there's that. Okay, I'll move on to the next concept, the three road right of way levels. An important misconception din, no? Some people have this misconception that the road right of way is ito lang kalsada yung bangketa sa grade level. This is not correct. The road right of way extends above grade and below grade, meaning the air above the road and the sidewalk is still part of the road right of way. The soil underneath the highway, underneath the road and the sidewalks, those are still part of the road right of way. When they're part of the road right of way, ibig sabihin, hindi yung dapat part ng private property and it cannot be used for private purposes kasi part siya ng road right of way. Okay? So, you cannot occupy the space above or the space beneath, not for private reasons. That's not allowed because that's still part of the road right of way. So, ito yung illustration in the building code. So, as you can see, road right of way below grade is basically lupa underneath, and above grade is just the air above. If you're going to occupy these spaces for any reason, you have to acquire the rights, you have to talk to the government, to the LGU, you have to have permission, and most likely you would have to be paying for the privilege, okay, of using that. Kunyari, what on earth could you use this for? Many reasons, many purposes. Like for example, gusto mo magpatayo ng footbridge, no, to make it easier for pedestrians to cross over to your building. You can't just do that because you would be occupying the road right of way above grade. Okay? So you can't do that without permission. You have to acquire the rights. You have to talk to the LGU and get permission first. Okay? This one I won't really read too much now. Basta ito yung road right of way above grade is just the airspace above. Ang importante yung capture dito is yung last bullet point. In case you are permitted to occupy this, kunyari, you built this footbridge for your project, and may permit ka naman, babayaran mo naman, etc. Basta ang point is, tinala ka naman, you must always maintain a clear height of 4.27 from the crown of the road to the bottom of the footbridge. Dapat may headroom, may clear headroom tayo na 4.27 for the road to ensure that all kinds of vehicles can still pass beneath this footbridge that you're constructing. Okay? Okay, let's go to this illustration now. So when you read Rule 8, you'll see this sketch, no? Parang section of a road right of way that's 30 meters wide. The first thing I'd like to point out is this is not really parang a requirement. This is more of a suggested configuration, but you don't necessarily have to follow this exactly. Nakalagay naman possible section lang at 30 meters wide. But this is a good guide. I mean, this is parang a good illustration of what they expect you to do. You might not be required to do this, but kumbaga, parang kung hindi ka naman sure what you want to do, maybe just do something like this kasi ito na yung parang one of the things that they recommend in the building code. So, what exactly did they do? So, meron silang 30-meter road right of way. What they did was, first of all, 2/3 of the available space, 2/3 of 30, ginamit nila for the street or for the carriageway. Ito yun. And then the remaining 1/3, hinati nila into two sidewalks. So itong sidewalk na to, and itong sidewalk na to, tig 1/6 yan kasi 1/3 divided by 2 is 1/6. The others, if you want, kayo na magpasa. Again, these are not really like required. No, this is just a suggestion. But yeah, it's there. I'm just making sure you understand what this is supposed to do. It's a suggestion. This crash course is not a substitute to your studying the building code on your own in detail. You still have to do that. No summary like this will be enough. You have to study the IRR in detail.